Hello there, it's your friend Phil, project management trainer and coach. Today I'm going to be talking about a certification not too many people have looked into, and that certification is called the PMI-SP, Project Management Institute's Scheduling Professional Credential. Right here on the screen I have the overview of the PMI-SP credential requirements. So let's take a look at these requirements. The first bucket, as most of these certifications are, for people that don't have degrees, high school diploma. You've got a high school diploma. Your scheduling experience is the next criteria you need to meet, which is 5,000 hours spent in the specialized area of professional scheduling within the last 5 consecutive years, and 40 hours of formal education in specialized scheduling, in project scheduling. The next bucket is those who have a 4-year degree, at least 3,500 hours spent in the specialized area of professional project scheduling within the last 5 consecutive years, and 30 contact hours of formal education. And then it says at the bottom, PMI accepts hours spent in training of Microsoft Project and other scheduling tools. I will also say if you have been a scheduler doing nothing but scheduling over that duration, over that period, or a large percentage of your job experience over the past 5 years happens to be in scheduling, it is likely you fit into this criteria. So if you spent 5 years and maybe 80% of your time, 70% of your time, maybe even 50% of your time over the past 5 years, scheduling with Microsoft Project or Primavera, P6, or whichever version you've been on, or even using other software tools like Smartsheets or PlanView or Clarity, whatever you have been using to schedule, if you have been professionally scheduling in a job, then you fit into these requirements. Once upon a time, my life was nothing but scheduling. That was pretty much about 90% of my job. And scheduling is an art on its own. It's something that people who are into it really enjoy. It might look a bit boring to people on the outside, but it could be a really fun job, especially if you enjoy it. But anyway, those are the requirements for the PMI-SP. The next thing I would like to point out in the PMI-SP is how the questions are broken out. So the blueprint is 14% are from the first domain called schedule strategy, 31% from schedule planning and development, 35% from schedule monitoring and controlling, 6% from schedule closeout, and 14% from stakeholder communications management. Now these are talked about in more detail in the PMI-SP content outline. Let's talk a little bit about the exam on page 17 as far as how long and how many questions. So there are 170 questions on the PMI-SP exam. There are 20 pre-test questions which do not count, and in all 150 questions are scored. The allotted time is 3.5 hours. This was the only exam, I have to say it, the only exam that I have been counted out on, and it's because there are some horrendously long questions, and if you spend too much time on them, you could spend more than the time you budgeted for the exam, and that's what happened to me, in all honesty. One particular question just took too long, and I should have skipped that question and moved on. So just beware of the very long questions. My advice will be to find your gimmies on this exam. Find what you know, answer it, keep looking for what you know, and don't spend time on what you don't. So next, I'm going to do a quick search here for the PMI-SP content outline. Let's put that in. And the content outline comes up. Let's open it up. This is one that you want to read. This is the blueprint for the PMI-SP exam. So let's take a quick read. This shows you how the exam is broken out. I showed you this in the other document, and it shows you the key skills that are needed. So at a high level, domain 1 is the skills centered around schedule strategy to establish the policies for configuring the schedule, to ensure that there is proper procedures in place for schedule baseline control, the schedule approach, establishing the schedule policies and parameters, thresholds of all sorts, earned value management techniques that pertain to scheduling. How is your SPI computed, and how are you going to manage the schedule as a whole? All of those, you can read those, but that's pretty much what they mean by this schedule strategy. For me, if you study in detail the handbook and this, the outline, and in addition to this, chapter 6 in the PMBOK guide, chapter 6 will give you a well-rounded view of what exactly PMI expects you to know, especially in this area of strategy. The plan schedule management process is one you want to dig into, understand the details, and I dare say for this exam, having practical knowledge of MS Project and Primavera will definitely help you on this exam. Then the next piece here is schedule planning and development. So this backtracks a little bit because getting into scheduling has some history from scope management. So things like understanding the WBS, how it's developed, the OBS, how the OBS and the WBS can be used to develop a RACI chart and all that kind of information. Then planning out your activities and milestones, planning out your activity durations, planning out your resources that you might need to get this project underway, sequencing the activities, understanding critical path and critical chain, and all that kind of stuff is pretty much what you do in this planning section. Developing the RBS for the resources, be they human, equipment, and material. And understanding the term schedule model is rather important. Understanding how to align the schedule with the overall plan, which means understanding other areas which could impact scheduling. Analyzing milestones and SOWs, performing a schedule risk analysis. This takes you a little bit into the risk management area. Understanding that consensus is needed, and understanding what the performance measurement baseline is, and all the other pieces that tie into that. So here, under task 12, the knowledge and skills, you can see you've got an overwhelming amount of detail that is not necessarily talked about in schedule management. So this is where knowledge of the scope management area, the risk management area, and even the cost management area, where we have contingency reserves or buffers being talked about, this will help you on this exam. Moving on to domain 3, schedule monitoring and control. So all of the activities to effectively control the schedule, performing a schedule analysis, performing an audit of how well schedules are being managed, understanding how to adjust or modify the schedule as needed. You know, the schedule is a living document. There's a difference between your schedule, project schedule, versus the schedule baseline. Schedule baseline cannot be changed without approval, but the living, breathing schedule, of course, needs updates. So understand that. Understanding what it means to update the schedule model. So the schedule model, that term, I would advise you to dig deep into it and understand it and get the concept into your head, such that when you see different interpretations of the schedule model, you have in the back of your mind the same data is behind the various interpretations of that model. That is very important to know. And of course, critical path and activity network diagrams, PDM, I dare say ADM, not that ADM is particularly big, but I would say PDM and ADM should be known and understood, and all the different perspectives to network diagrams. All those other auxiliary definitions like GERT and dummies and things like that are definitely good to know for this exam. Moving on to the fourth domain, which is 6% of the exam, schedule closeout. In schedule closeout, this is where you need to understand final acceptance of a contractual schedule, being able to evaluate the final schedule performance against the baseline, understanding how to update organizational process assets with lessons learned and best practices from the scheduling domain, being able to distribute the reports, understanding the PM has that responsibility to distribute reports, carry out earned value calculations on SPI and so on. It might surprise you, but that is definitely a topic you want to know for the scheduling exam. Earned value management, because it pertains to scope, time, and cost. So, in controlling, that's where we use these indices, SPI and CPI. And to understand that the PM needs to archive schedule files and so on. And then domain 5 talks more about stakeholder communications management. And this is where a good understanding of the stakeholder area and the communications area comes in, but it has a subtle twist to scheduling. So knowing those areas are good, but it has a slant towards scheduling. So understanding that these relationships with stakeholders needs to be developed to support the project schedule, maintaining visibility of the schedule, working with the appropriate stakeholders to get their support, providing senior management and other stakeholders with different reports or updates to the schedule, communicating schedule issues that could impact delivery of project scope or adherence to the schedule management plan. So it all has a very schedule-based slant, so to speak. And then lastly, all the domains. This covers all the knowledge that's needed. So, project managers spend 70 to 90% of the time communicating. There's a lot of implied soft skills and communication and leadership that should be here. So just be aware of that. And that pretty much is our PMI-SP content outline. I would advise that you read the document in its entirety. I've been rather quick on reading this document and giving you the top of the waves, but I would advise you to download a copy. It's free out there, and know this in totality. I did this before my exam, and the payoff was great. I went a little bit over the top in reading the scheduling, the standard for scheduling. That is a very important one to read as well, I must say. But as you read the Project Management Institute standard for scheduling, be aware that there's a lot of content that goes into a lot of detail in a tabular form. That stuff, don't lose too much sleep trying to cram or memorize all that stuff, because it will not pay you very much in the long run. I would say the first part of the scheduling standard is what you want to focus on for the exam, and then read those chapters I highlighted in the PMBOK guide, chapter 5, 6, 7, chapter 10, chapter 13, and chapter 11. Did I say chapter 11? Well, all that stuff is very important. If you have any questions, or if you exclusively want a PMI-SP class, you know where to find us. Go to Praizion.com, hit contact us, shoot an email if you want your PMs to be trained for the PMI-SP exam or any other exam, PMP, PMI, RMP, you name it. Look forward to speaking to you soon in one of our classes or online. Thanks for your audience.